So, good evening, hello, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Virtual Ark workshop with Innovation in Isolation, the Frozen Ark, and me, Paul Evans. I hope you're going to enjoy this session. We reckon it'll probably take about 40 minutes or thereabouts. And before we start, it might be worth having a look around to see that you've got everything available to hand that you're going to need. So you'll probably need a paper and pencil. Let's hope you got that. A marker pen would be really useful. Modeling clay, Play-Doh, Themo, plasticine, anything like that, or really anything that'll hold a shape, right? I've been using silver foil, which is really quite handy. So anything really that when you mold it or fold it is going to hold a shape. Also, I'll tell you what else is useful, and that's a modelling tool, something that you can use to kind of make marks in your model with. I'm actually using the end of the biro here. There's the cap of a biro. That's actually really quite useful. But you don't need a modelling tool. A lot of people make really excellent models just by manipulating their clay with their fingers. Modelling tools not essential. The other thing that you might want is to have an animal in mind. We're going to be thinking quite a bit about animals that are endangered, facing extinction this evening. So maybe have a think about that and try and get something into your mind's eye that you might want to think about modelling. What we'll be doing is we'll be making a model of our favourite animal. Making a start with some designs for a virtual ark. I'll talk more about a virtual ark and the ideas behind that in a minute. We'll also be learning about the Frozen Ark, which is a biobank, and we'll also be looking at a couple of the favourite animals from the Frozen Ark team. So there's quite a lot to get into this evening. I'm going to say, if you are going to make a model with us, don't actually feel obliged if you don't really want to do this, but it'd be great if you could. If you're going to make a model with us this evening, then don't worry too much about getting it finished within the time that we've got in the workshop. You know, make sure that you're kind of happy with your work. So if you need to put it aside and kind of come back to it after the workshop, that'll be fine. What we would like you to do, though, and this is kind of important, we'd like you to share your creations with us. We're going to be crediting all contributions to our virtual ark. So yeah, when we'll give you details as to how to send those images over to us later. But yeah, please include your name when you send that image and that info. Okay, so a virtual ark with me, Frozen Ark, and Innovation in Isolation. Let's start with a little bit of information about me, a few examples of my work. Okay, so this is, I think the first thing I need to say is that I really love animals. I've always been really quite obsessed, actually, with biology and with zoology and with animal species. And this is a drawing I made about 11 years ago to help celebrate the anniversary of Charles Darwin, the famous evolutionary scientist. And this is a life-size drawing of Physeter macrocephalus, the sperm whale. Now, what I really like about this drawing is the fact that, in fact, even though it's really huge, this would be actually probably a young teenager, not a fully grown male by any stretch of the imagination. A fully grown male would be twice the size of that. Here's another view from a slightly different perspective of the same drawing. Here's another piece of mine, which is entitled Chaos and Theory, and I made this in about 2010. And the idea behind this is that it's actually an animation, but what happens is that each time the butterfly's wings open and close with its breath, the species changes. So this is the first species, Tempestus angelus. Phasmatis statua. and Decorus exemplum. I had quite a bit of fun coming up with names for these butterfly species. And this is how it was originally presented on a series of screens outside Sheffield Institute of Art, and it actually looks quite cool as the wings open and close. So we started off with something really big, sperm whale, and what we're moving to now is something really, really tiny. This is this is the internal structure of the scale of a beetle called Caphoculus, and I was fortunate enough to go to the ESRF, the European Synchrotron Research Facility in France, a couple of years ago with some physicists, and they were looking into the structure of this beetle wing, because they were looking for something very, very white to replace titanium oxide in paint. And basically it's a structural colour that's actually represented by this structure. And these spinning tops, again, this is an animation, these spinning tops represent the neutrons that are interacting with that structure. Now, my idea was to kind of create a massive sculpture that would have cost a fortune, but we could do it in virtual reality. So that's what we did. And we'll be sending some links after this talk to some animations, some fly-throughs of these two works of art. Okay, so a virtual arc. What might a virtual arc look like? So this is something that I worked on with a team of designers based in Sheffield, and this is a gallery of art based on social science research. And we work with young people from Rawmarsh Community School in South Yorkshire, and we worked on a number of classroom workshop formats, including cartoons and some creative writing. And this comes from a creative writing workshop based around banter. And what the young people did was they kind of responded either through writing, through cartoons, through you can see some kind of nice graffiti here on the walls of the gallery here. So in a number of ways that they responded to the tasks they were set in the workshops. And all of these things have come out of the imaginations of these young people. And I particularly like this sculpture garden, which we can see through the windows of the gallery, which was created from, well, the young people made all these models in plasticine, and we took photographs of them and created three-dimensional sculptures from them as well. So hopefully when you get a chance to do some modelling in a moment or two, you can think about where your model might fit into our virtual arc, which might look something like this. Okay, Jordan.
So we're going to do some interactive elements to this talk, which you're sadly going to have to put up with me for. So you're going to have to go to the website www.menti.com. So you should be able to see that at the top of the screen there, www.menti.com. And when it asks for a code, you just want to enter 208249. And we're going to use this mostly at this point and toward the end of the session. So it'd be great for you to use this. There is a small delay on YouTube, so absolutely expecting there to be a little bit of a pause before any answers come in. But the question you're going to start with is, what is/are your favorite animals? And we've already got some answers coming through. So we have sailfish, blue whale, so there's some seaborne creatures. We have elephant and panda, some of the charismatic megafauna. Marlin, so we've got a nice fish again. Cat, honey badger, incredible. Loggerhead turtle, polecat, lion. Yeah, some really interesting animals here. So a lot of the bigger, more charismatic things that people tend to see in conservation adverts and things like that. Bald eagles, amazing seals, black mambas, nudibranches, Jabu Jabu the whale, incredible. So Oh, Tirico, is that how you pronounce that? I've never even heard of that one. Amazing. Wolves, leopards, badgers, cows. Yeah, so you can see that there's a great diversity there, everything from seafaring creatures to birds flying through the air, and even some things in more exotic locales. So that's great to get an idea of. And within this session, there's the opportunity to model your favorite animal using clay or tin foil or whatever you like. So keep these in mind as something that you might want to model. So on to the next question, which should load automatically for you. What dangers are animals facing that could cause extinction? So you just named some of your favorite animals. What things in the wild effectively threaten them, or even not in the wild? So you can think about things that humans do, or even things that naturally occur. So here we already have a couple. So climate change and plastic pollution. So plastic, there were some really big campaigns against single-use plastics, particularly last year. I think they're still ongoing, but slightly less sort of media frenzied. And it's a really big issue, particularly for animals in the sea, but just generally everywhere. Loss of habitat, climate change, humans, definitely humans. So a lot of these things obviously tie into humans. And you can see some of the words are bigger here, and that's where people are choosing the same thing twice. So multiple people voting for the same thing, which is great. We are the danger, sadly. Very bleak, but true. Habitat loss, urbanization, overfishing, illegal trade. Yeah, some really intelligent answers here. I think if the world was in the hands of the people tuning in for this, we'd all be all right. So clearly a great number of issues for us to contend with. So thanks a lot for answering all. We've got more like mining and all sorts. So we'll come back to Mentimeter toward the end. So have that link ready. But until then, I'll pass you back to Paul.
So this is the first creative part of the workshop, if you like, this evening, and it's fairly easy, really. We want you to model your favourite animal. So I hope you've got something to hand that you'll be able to model with. We have some clay here. That's an example of what you might be using. Some plasticine. As I said earlier, silver foil also works. And have a think about which animal you would like to model. You might want to think about one of the charismatic mega mammals that Jordan mentioned earlier, something like the tiger or the elephant. I guess you could say that the loggerhead turtle's kind of charismatic and fairly mega. But also think about the mini beasts, the ones that are maybe a little bit less glamorous, like the snails, millipedes, all those kind of things. They matter too. And we'll be talking about one of those in a moment. So once you've decided on your animal, we're going to lead you through a few steps on how to make a model. Okay, so when I was thinking about this, I thought, yeah, let's do two examples. Let's work on a mini beast. I've got a snail on the left here, and on the right here, I've got a black-footed ferret that's waiting to be painted. I chose the black-footed ferret because Mafalda Costa, one of the team, it's her research animal. As I said earlier, don't worry if you don't get your model finished on time in this workshop. There's no rush. You'll be able to come back afterwards and complete it to your satisfaction. I'm going to use silver foil here. I'm going to hold it up to the camera and try and give you an indication of what I'm doing. First things first, if you're using modelling clay, it's a good idea to kind of scrunch it into a ball, roll it around and get it nice and warm and malleable, get it stretchy and pliable so that you can work with it. And then the next stage, really, if you're working on a four-legged beast, is to roll out a bit for the middle, and then four 4 little sausages for its arms and legs, and then a round bit for its head. The good thing about silver foil is that you can kind of shape it almost around your finger, and that's what I've done with my model. I'm working on a humpback whale here, and I've kind of scrunched the tail around there like that. It's probably more of a sperm whale tail at the moment, so I'm going to kind of squeeze it around a bit, make it a bit more like a. There we go. That's a bit more like a humpback whale's tail, as you can see. Okay, so there's no excuse. Get some silver foil and make your model. When you're working on a snail or something like that, it's quite easy to just pinch the eyes out. As we can see on the bottom of the left-hand picture here, the shell itself, you can just roll your sausage into a sausage of clay into a tight little spiral. Okay, when I was making my black-footed ferret here on the right, I realised that I'd probably not added enough clay to his back. So what I did was I added a bit more to his back, and then I also realised that I'd forgotten to add his tail, so I needed to add a bit more clay to make a tail. And what I've done at the front of him, I've made his ears point forward so that he can hear what's going on. Right. So what I've done now is I've just added a flipper to my humpback whale here. And there we go. I've added a second flipper. So as you can see, I've managed to make an extraordinarily lifelike model of a humpback whale out of silver foil. I hope that yours are coming on equally well. Maybe write a comment about your model and how it's shaping up. You can do that in chat. While you're doing that, we'll introduce Isa Pais, who's a primate specialist, and she's going to talk about her favourite animal.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone. So I am a volunteer at the Frozen Ark, and I'm currently doing my PhD on primates, and that's why I'm the primate specialist in Frozen Ark. But actually, the first animal I've worked with in the wild was the loggerhead sea turtle. And that was my favorite animal that I modeled when we did our trial workshop. And besides being the first animal I worked with, I love the turtles because they are like living dinosaurs. So basically, the turtles we see nowadays, the sea turtles we see nowadays, haven't changed much since the time of the dinosaurs. And I find that amazing. It must be that they are very fitted for the environment that they live in. And then, as you may know, we can find sea turtles in most oceans and some seas, except in the polar regions. And when Paul asked me three facts that were most curious about sea turtles, it wasn't easy because for me all of them are interesting, but I came up with three. Which is, so as you may know, sea turtles have lungs like us, but actually when they are asleep, they can spend 4 to 7 hours underwater without coming to the surface to breathe. If you measure the salt content on a sea turtle teardrop, you will find that it's much higher than the seawater where they live in, and that's a way of excreting extra salt in their bodies. And when baby turtles hatch, males, all of them go to the sea, to the oceans, but males will stay there forever. Females are the only ones who come ashore, and this is because they are going to lay their eggs. And depending on the species, they may lay between 50 and 350 eggs per clutch. And actually, one male can be fecunded more than once per mating season. So you might think, why so many eggs in one clutch? And this is because on average, only 1 in 1,000 sea turtles will reach adulthood due to several dangers, predation, and several other problems with pollution, etc., which threats I'm talking now. So all 7 species of sea turtles are under threat. Some are more threatened than others, but all of them are under threat. And this is mostly because nowadays, as you may be aware, the oceans are quite polluted, including plastic, fishing nets and hooks and lines all contribute to the death of sea turtles. The human presence on popular beaches are destroying or stopping sea turtles to come ashore and lay the eggs. So sometimes they just lay the eggs in the sea, and obviously they won't hatch. And also in some countries, sea turtles are still a very precious source of protein, or they are seen as a treat, and their eggs are very valuable. So these are a few threats that I haven't mentioned all of them, they're just a few, but actually everyone can help a bit in the conservation of sea turtles. So starting by the basic one, just use less plastic, especially plastic bags and balloons, because these might be mistaken by jellyfishes once they land on water. If you like fish, to eat fish, please make sure that you buy it from sustainable sources. So mostly if they are caught with nets that are that do not catch sea turtles and other marine mammals. And if you travel to any of these countries, make sure you don't buy products that are originating from sea turtles. And after all, you can always help an NGO, a non-governmental organization that works for the conservation of sea turtles. And just out of curiosity, I know Paul will talk more about biobanks, but the Frozen Ark Biobank in Nottingham already has a few samples from the green turtle, and they were collected from aquariums. I'm sure it's blood, and they were collected from Belgium and another one from Holland. And at the moment they are frozen in the biobank of Nottingham. So up to you, Paul.
Thank you, Isa.
You're welcome.
It's great. Okay, so here's Sam here working on his chameleon. We actually trialled this workshop in Cardiff a few months ago, and I think, well, there was quite a few members of the team who modelled their own animals, their own favourite animals. And here's Sam working on a chameleon. As you can see, an absolutely spectacularly wonderful chameleon. We really like the tongue there. We like that. And here's Isa's sea turtle. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the Frozen Ark now. Right, okay. What is the Frozen Ark project, you ask? At the Frozen Ark, we freeze the DNA and cells of endangered animals and store them in a biobank. So do you know what a biobank is? If not, I'll tell you. So here we have some pictures of a biobank. As you can see, it's a series of big freezers. People have to wear special gloves when they're handling material from these freezers, because otherwise their arms would literally freeze. It's extraordinarily cold, minus 196 degrees Celsius. I've got written down here, which is very cold indeed. And if you look, you'll see that everything's very carefully labelled up. So, in answer to the question, what is a biobank? A biobank is a place where material from animals, such as cells and DNA, is stored, usually by freezing it in a big freezer, such as we've just seen. And we do this to learn more about the animals we want to protect and to keep them safe from extinction. DNA. This is important. I mentioned DNA earlier. If you're not aware of what it is, DNA is found inside every living cell. It's made of two long chains that twist around each other. It's actually a rather beautiful molecule. And these chains are made of basic building blocks, nucleotides, and there are four types of building blocks, nucleotides: A, T, C, and G. And the order of these letters provides information on how to build and maintain a plant or animal in the way that letters form words. It's the essential code of life, really. And here's a lovely picture of this fantastic molecule. And why are we storing animal DNA? Animal species are dying out at a fast pace, and sadly this is mostly because of human actions. Isa mentioned some of those earlier when she was talking about the sea turtle. And we can help these endangered animals by providing scientists with their cells and DNA so they can find out more ways in which to protect them and keep them safe. And why are animals dying out? Loss of places to live, moving species from one part of the world to the other where they don't belong, and then they compete with the native organisms that are supposed to be there. Overfishing, illegal wildlife trade, pollution, climate change, and lots more reasons, unfortunately. The loss of an animal species destroys the results of millions of years of evolution. And if we don't preserve this information, then important information about the species will be lost. And good question, how many animals can we fit in a fridge? Okay, well, you can fit an awful lot of animals in a fridge because basically the material that we're preserving here is very tiny. We're only preserving cells, some stuff that you can't really see with the naked eye. I'll just point out top right. You'll see that these vials or tubes that specimens are kept in, they've all got barcodes so that. I guess that contains information about the organism, and we can be sure that that it's not going to get lost and that we can find it when we want to. And the Frozen Ark is it's a consortium of zoos and scientists and other organisations that are dedicated to this endeavour. And Frozen Ark material can be used in conservation to help in breeding programs of endangered species and used in research to help us to find out more about animal species. So conservation, breeding programs, sequencing DNA for medical development, and the new synthetic biology industry, and to build tissues, stem cell technologies. And if you want to find out more about the project, then do visit the website at www.frozenark.org. Quite well represented on social media here. Use the hashtag ARKS21st Century and check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and there's the Twitter handle there for Innovation in Isolation at the bottom there too. So yeah, if you enjoyed what you've seen this evening, then give us a shout. Okay, so the next creative part of the workshop this evening, I'd like to get your ideas about a design for our virtual ark. And you can see at the bottom here, there's three little pictures which show you some of the designs that we came up with in the workshop that I mentioned earlier, that we did in Cardiff a few months ago. And all great designs start with a sketch, with a drawing, so that we can get these ideas out of our heads onto a piece of paper and out into the world. So there's a bit of a discussion about it. And this idea here is based on the idea of the tree of life. You'll be aware, I'll move on actually, I'll show you this next picture. So the tree of life, you'll be familiar with this idea, I'm sure. basically the simpler animals at the bottom of the tree near the roots, and then animals become more and more complex as you work your way up the tree, to the point where you get the more complex, more developed animals, if you like, in the higher branches. Of course, we know now that that's a little bit of an oversimplification, and this tree here on the right, which I think is an absolutely beautiful drawing, actually, as much as anything else, shows us a more contemporary idea of how that idea, a more contemporary view of how that idea might actually be in reality. Okay, so the other idea that we had the idea of a tree of life. We also had the idea of a balloon journey that we could take to various islands and visit our animals in a balloon. But what we'd like to do now really is to make a sketch. Have a think about what your virtual ark might be like. As I say, we've had ideas based on a tree of life. We've had ideas based on a balloon journey. What would your ideas be? I mean, it could be a zoo, it could be a safari park, it could be something like that. But try and think this through. An idea that I like is the idea of basically it comes from Newt Scaramander's suitcase in Fabulous Beasts and Where to Find Them, sort of a gateway into a world within a world, featuring a number of environments for his fabulous beasts. So yeah, if you can make a sketch, that'd be great. We'd really like to see them. We'll give you some detail about where to send those to us in a moment. For now, while you're thinking about it, Jordan will tell you something more about. Will tell you something about his favourite animals.
Incredible. So, whilst you're thinking about the kind of shape that you can imagine a virtual ark taking, I'm effectively an invertebrate specialist, or so they call me. So I spent most of my career looking at things like spiders and worms and beetles, a lot of the things that people don't necessarily think are as attractive as things like pandas, but I'm going to try and prove them wrong today. So I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite animals. There we go. So I'm going to talk to you about something that not many people really ever talk about, and in fact not many people actually know about, something called springtails, also known as collembola. So they're basically the underappreciated acrobats of the undergrowth. They're absolutely abundant. They're everywhere. You can find them in your garden. If you walk down the road, you'll probably be able to find them on every tree, bush and shrub that you can find. But because they're so small, they're only normally about 1 millimeter to a couple of millimeters big. So you're not likely to spot them very readily. But the reason for their name is some special legs they have, effectively. They're not quite legs, but we'll call them that for today. That basically spring out like that when they want to get away quickly. So they have this incredible mechanism where they can just jump through the air. And you can hopefully see in the bottom right of the screen, some of them are actually a little bit cute as well, just basically blobs with eyes and antennae. I mentioned earlier that they can be found pretty much everywhere, and that even includes snow. So this is a snowy day in Cardiff. It was the Beast from the East from a couple of years ago. And there are particular cold snows in Canada where you can find springtails walking around on the snow surface, and they're referred to as snow fleas. So even in really, really cold temperatures, you can still find them. And they're extremely abundant where you do find them, typically. So you'll find hundreds of them in a really, really small space. But regardless of this abundance, there are still some that face challenges in nature. One of the greatest challenges to many invertebrates is development. So we build houses in the most beautiful locations. Everyone wants to have a house overlooking the valley or looking over a nice brook. But the reality is that these are often the homes of many invertebrates, some of which are extremely rare. And one of the things we need to be conscious of in defending this biodiversity and this wildlife is effectively choosing where to put these houses in the most responsible way possible. Another thing to consider is just being eco-conscious. So Isa mentioned a few things regarding turtles, like plastic use and effectively consumer habits. So buying things from responsible sellers, for example. It's through decisions like that through less plastic use, so we can protect even things like invertebrates, which are still affected by all of these problems. But probably one of the most pivotal things in combating biodiversity loss and trying to protect these wonderful, wonderful species is learning and teaching. So by learning more about things, even as obscure as springtails, you can then go and tell your friends and your family all about springtails. They would love for you to talk to them for 2 hours solid about springtails over Christmas dinner. They want nothing else from their life. So please do that. And by appreciating these things, even the small things, we can really learn better how to protect them in our society. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Jordan. I love those springtails. I really love them. Okay, so this is our team getting their ideas from the 2-dimensional sketch into a 3-dimensional model. Ta-da, here we have the Tree of Life virtual arc architectural model, and as you can see, we enter at the base of the tree and work our way out towards the branches where we find our animals waiting for us. And here's an aerial view, well, a balloon basket view of our balloon journey virtual arc. We can see Isa's sea turtle in the sea here, and top right we've got an island with some vegetation on it. That's probably a tropical island, I would say.
Okay, so coming back to the Mentimeter as promised. So once again, you just need to go to this web address, www.menti.com, and you just need to enter this code 208249. So if you do that, you should have the question appear on your screen, just asking you, what can we do to save animals from extinction? So we discussed right at the start of the session about the different challenges that animals face. So you can obviously just think of solutions to that, but hopefully from the session, you may even have more ideas. So already I can see biobanking on there, which is great, and even research, both of which are pivotal to Frozen Arc's sort of aims and goals, but also stopping climate change, which, as we discussed in the context of many animals today, is a really big problem. Recycling as well, very important. No single-use plastics ties into that very nicely. Nature reserves. So like we said, with the building of houses, we need to choose carefully where we do that. Reducing meat consumption, yeah, and conservation, stop destroying habitats. I like that, so very good action points. Yeah, you tell them. Very little. Yeah, that's a bleak answer. Hopefully we can do something, but we'll see. Time will tell. Buy less. Yeah, very good. Some really good answers here. Donate, yeah, so you can donate to various different charities and organizations that can help research and protect these wonderful animals. Incredible. So I'll move on to the next question. If you do have any more ideas that you want to enter, just put them in the YouTube comments or wherever you like. So the next question is, do you think biobanks can save animals from extinction? So from those answers, I'm hoping we have at least one yes. And we do. Fantastic. Sometimes. That's a very fair point. There are some cases that maybe biobanking isn't going to solve every problem. But of course, it will solve many of the issues for many of the less endangered animals. Some people don't know, which is, again, fair. You know, you need to learn everything about a topic before you make a decision sometimes. So very good. Lots of yeses and sometimes as though no no's yet. I may have just jinxed it, who knows. But that's really great to see that the value of biobanking has come across in the session. So on that note then, I'll just move on back to Paul.
Yeah, just a reminder to send us your models if you've been making any models. Then any silver foil or Play-Doh or whatever you've been making your models from, do send us photographs of them and help us design a virtual reality experience. As I said, if you make sure that your name is included in the email or in the hashtag. If you make sure you get that information over to us, and we'll credit you in our virtual arc when it's finally constructed. So yeah, so send to info@frozenark.org or use hashtag ARCS21st Century on social media to show us your models or your drawings. Yeah, whatever you've managed to produce in this session, please send it over to us. And here we go again. Here's the website if you want to find out more about Frozen Ark. And there's, as I said, well represented on social media. And there's the hashtag again, hashtag ARCS21st Century.
So the final bit of Mentimeter. So we once again just want to go to www.menti.com and use the code 208249. And we're just wondering, did you enjoy this session? It'd be great to know for future sessions and general feedback. We've had some yeses so far, which is really good. Very nice to see. And I've seen a few of the comments on the YouTube as we've been going along, and lots of people looking at this, so that's really good. It's nice to know it's being so well received. So it looks like, oh, still getting a couple through. Fantastic. Lots of yeses. Wonderful. Hopefully that means that we'll get some nice drawings and models through, Paul.
Hopefully, yeah. Please share them with us. We want to see them.
I should add as well that the YouTube video that you'll probably be watching this on, in the description there are the hashtags and tags for Twitter. So I think they should work for Instagram as well. So if you did want to post any photos or anything like that, do just put them on there using those tags, which you can just copy and paste. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. And then there's one more after this. So how would you describe the session? So you can use whatever word you like. There is a profanity filter, so please try not to use those. So basically, did you find it exciting or engaging? Did you find the idea of biodiversity loss scary? It'd be great to hear the kind of things that you thought. So interactive, informative, exciting, interesting, fun. So these are all really good words. Informative is coming through quite big, so a nice consensus around that. Thought-provoking, very good. Yeah, there's been a lot of content about the things you can do to change your everyday habits to help biodiversity. So hopefully that's made a few people think about things like that even. Amazing, innovative, enjoyable, great, fantastic. Very, lots of words beginning with I. I don't know if that's just because of I3.
The I words are the best words.
Yeah, I3 making a comeback. There we go. Yeah, hopefully it stays that way. Excellent. So we'll move on to the final question of the Mentimeter then, which is, what would you say is the take-home message? So if you were to describe the outcomes of this in one simple phrase, it can be a word if you like, or a whole sentence. Just what would you tell someone if they said, what did you learn from this session? Hopefully at least one person will say that it's made them a better sort of Play-Doh plasticine modeler. That's the dream. Biobanking can help conservation. Importance of conservation. Very good. Yeah, so clearly the importance of biobanking has truly been driven in. So hopefully you'll all be starting up your own biobanks from your homes somehow. I'm not sure how that would work. Maybe don't try that. Design an animal and an ark. Fantastic. With great power comes great responsibility. Save the spiders and other creatures. Yeah, That's spot on. Yeah, we want to save all the creatures. Protecting the genetic diversity of a species is very important in protecting them in the long run. It's a very, very good point. And only one planet. Yeah, nice and succinct. Yeah, and on that one planet, we only really have one shot with each of these incredible species, which call them home. We have a responsibility to prevent animal extinction. Yeah, all animals are special. They are indeed. Definitely a creative way to learn more about planet Earth's animals and the influence of humans on the environment. Amazing. And hopefully when we have all of this translate into a VR experience, that'll be even more crazy and visual. Anyone can make a difference. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. That should be the tagline. Amazing. So on that note, we've just had one more in the 11th hour. Where is it? If we save genetic material, we can avoid information loss about species. Yeah, amazing. So I'll pass it back to you, Paul.
Any questions? Yeah. How are we going to deal with this, guys?
So we should have some questions. I'll let Washington deal with that.
Thank you very much. That was extremely interesting and very fascinating, guys. I definitely learned loads. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'm sure there will be. Just please put them on the chat from YouTube or here on Zoom, and Paul, Evan, and Isa will be there to answer you. Okay. In the meantime, I have a question. Paul, it's a quickly question. So you're storing all the biological materials of endangered species, yeah? Can you bring them back to life, like in Jurassic Park?
Oh no, not that question. I think Jordan's going to answer this question.
I can give it a go. So there are people who have tried that in the past. There are people it's referred to as the Lazarus approach. Effectively bringing an animal back from the dead or extinction, so all of them being dead. So I believe they tried it with a few different species, but there are all sorts of ethical issues with that. It goes into a whole philosophical wormhole. So many people try to avoid doing that these days. So in that sense, as one of the people said toward the end there, we have one planet, and as I said, we sort of have one shot at each of these species, really.
Perfect. Right, I've got a question here from Vozo. What are the biggest challenges with the Frozen Ark project, and what if you have a power cut?
I think this is a very good question. I don't know if there's Falda's there. Maybe she can answer this one.
Hi guys, very good question. So regarding the power cuts, so most of these freezers, they have alarms put in. So if a power cut happens, then that triggers an alarm that goes to the person responsible for monitoring the freezers. So we'll be able to go in and move the samples if need be. But also another thing that Frozen Ark advocates is actually to store samples at 2 different locations to avoid loss. You know, if something happens on one location, at least we have a duplicate in another location. So that will be, yeah, that's kind of the way that would avoid something like this happening.
Oh wow, that's interesting. That's very useful. Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone?
I have a question. Just a clarification more than anything. So if I get this right, so you're looking to build a virtual reality experience of this virtual tree. Is that to use as an educational tool, or to use as some sort of tool just to take people through this tree of life that you were speaking about?
I think that's a really good question, actually, Raphael. I think it will have an educational element, but I think that what we're aiming to produce really more than anything else is a sense of connection. Do you know what I mean? And I'm tempted to think that that's probably deeper than education. I think it's something that we're hoping to kind of generate almost at a cellular level. Do you know what I mean? We want people to be kind of really, I think one of the biggest problems that we have really as a culture is disconnection from nature. And I think what we're aiming to do with this is to reconnect people. I mean, in a way, like almost in the same emotional way that you're connected to a companion animal. Do you know what I mean? I think that would be the big ambition from my point of view. But I think it will need an educational element as well. I think that people will be going there to learn about these species and to learn about what we can do to save them.
Thank you. Just one more. So will this virtual reality be available as a resource that people can download to their VR headsets, or do you have to go to like a museum to, how will people be able to access it?
Well, I should think we'll be able to do it through YouTube VR. Yeah.
That's great. I've got another question from Ed. He said, obviously the so-called Lazarus resurrection approach is one of the most infamous ideas regarding the material of endangered species. How do you see the material being used in a way that is more easily achievable with the current technology?
I can try to answer that, maybe.
Yeah,
So obviously Jordan mentioned this resurrection approach, which is not what we kind of do at Frozen Ark. So Frozen Ark works as a biorepository, so we keep the samples, and the idea is to make these samples available then to the research community and also to the conservation community. So people can request these samples to study the genes of this species. Or in the case of some of our partner collections, they actually store cells and gametes of the endangered species, and these type of samples can then be used for conservation breeding programs and for genetic rescue. So there is an application now. So that's what we basically work towards, not the resurrection of species that gone extinct.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for answering that. Right, so is there any other questions on YouTube or anywhere? No?
Not so much of a question, but I have my drawing of an ark. I came up with it mid-session, so I thought I'd quickly share it. So it's very bleak, but there you go. It's a waiting room where the animals are queuing to go to a graveyard, and the graveyard is extinction. And on the walls are pictures of various human actions that are killing them. But my idea would be there'll be another route away from the graveyard, and that would be research and things.
Oh no.